Well, the new environment's going to have to be a little bit like Rip Van Winkle, because it's going to take a while.
Thumbs up.
Good. Okay, welcome to the Ojai Basin Groundwater Management Agency. It is 5 o'clock. Today is October 25th, 2018. We're in the council chambers for the Ojai City Hall. Could I get a roll call, please?
Tony Johnston.
Here.
Richard Pages.
Here.
Jim Finch.
Here.
Wes Baggerly.
Here.
Dan Grace.
Here. Arise and do the Pledge of Allegiance. Our newest member, would you lead us, please?
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Richard? All right, item number 3 would be directors' announcements and reports. From the mutual standpoint, one of our pumps blew up this week and we replaced it. That's about all the updates I have. I know that Senior Canyon did get a little update last time they were here when Peter was here, but from the mutual standpoint, we're pumping water and keeping our uses down as much as we can. Ojai Water Conservation District, anything to report?
Did not meet.
No meeting from them. City of Ojai, anything to
Nothing.
report?
Nothing this week.
Nothing to report. Casitas Mutual Water Company, lake levels for reporting.
That's Water District.
Water District, excuse me.
You're welcome. The lake level as of 25 October 2018 is at 30.9%. The elevation of the lake is at 482.2 feet above mean sea level, which means that there are 73,578 acre feet in storage. Would you like me to repeat that?
Yes.
The lake percentage is 30.9. The elevation is 482.2, which means that there are 73,578 acre feet in storage.
What's the current declared drought for Casitas right now?
We're in stage 3. I did some calculations on the number of days it took us to change from, well, it was 5 days at 31%. So I started counting 5 days for the time we have left, and we should be in stage 4 by the end of November.
Okay, so are you guys going to wait to declare that until you actually cross over the line where you need to be crossed over and it's declared?
That's our policy, but I'm trying to get as much information out ahead of that happening on the web page so people can understand what what stage 4 means to them. We still have 3 segments on the main page of the website related to stage 3, and that's not what people want to know. They want to know what stage 4 is. So I'm working on that.
Okay, and as a general rule, what's the water reduction use from Casitas from the baseline?
Well, the policy is going to be another 10% reduction in the allocation, plus some demand management reductions. But we have heard that the amount of conservation that's already taken place in the district is way past stage 4, and people are actually infringing on stage 5 reductions. So if you're under your allocation, you're probably not going to get any, you won't see anything happening.
All right, so that's on average, you're off by a good number, but there's going to be some uses out there that are going to not be down.
And they'll be sorry.
All right. Okay. You've given them plenty of warning.
Yes.
All right. Anything else from Casitas?
No, that's it.
Community Facilities District update.
I don't have anything.
Well,
You actually do.
Well, yeah, but this is,
We-
Casitas produces this information, not me.
So on
I would tell you if the community is in, getting ready to riot, something like that.
okay, and
hold
Hey,
a parade.
Yeah, or hold a parade. Or, but the data comes from Casitas.
Yeah.
Okay, so, all right, let's talk about then. Is
and
this
it is
data
what it
not
is.
going to be, you're not going to present the data that's presented through Casitas, or you're going to get your own data, or where are we going to be getting data so that we can have some baselines for these wells?
You
Data
have
comes
it.
from Casitas.
Excuse me?
This data comes from Casitas, I would assume.
That's correct.
Yes.
So we're good accepting this data at your level?
How can we not be?
Okay, that's the question I'm asking.
No, if I have a problem, I'll
Oh, okay, all right,
up.
all right.
The one thing that would, I don't know if it's in here or not, but the one thing I think would be an interesting addition to this would be, and you may already do it, there's a report on how much water was delivered in the community facilities district, well versus Casitas.
You know, we use this much in well water, we use this much in Casitas, what the breakdowns were on a given reporting period.
It might lag behind
It's okay.
because it's a monthly
Yeah.
billing.
Is it done monthly?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll ask him to do that, okay?
And as for everybody else's purposes in the agenda, is the well levels for all the Casitas, the wells that Casitas has in the community facilities district is on item page, called as item 3. Anything other announcements or anything from the directors? All right, item number 4 would be a basin status report, current status of the basin, the input, the output, and the storage. Jordan.
Yes. Okay, so not much rain, a little bit here and there, quarter of an inch maybe up there. Now, what that means for this October, it is, of course, the beginning of the new water year as of October 1st. And we actually do see a little bit of reprise in the basin water levels and a slight increase in storage, almost more associated with a little bit less pumping in the beginning of October, such that when we downloaded the data this month, we actually saw a rise of about 1 foot from a low of October 3rd. Now, time will tell if that is the true nadir for the basin and storage this year, but at that point it was about 57% of capacity and just a little shy of 50,000 acre feet in storage. The beauty of that is that relatively early in the year and almost right on time, we did potentially hit that nadir. Time will tell, of course, how warm and dry the rest of autumn is, and when and if we receive any of the much anticipated rainfall. Of course, basin production via pumping wells is still the major output from the basin. It kind of always has been, and we just are still waiting on some of the extraction data from the quarter ended September 30th, and once that comes in, then we'll be able to quantify that effectively for the forthcoming annual report, which, as typically, has both extraction from all the pumpers, the community facilities district separated out, as well as Casitas deliveries, once we get all those data in. On the discharge side is the surface water. I just made a reconnaissance of San Antonio Creek and noted that there was 335 linear feet of flow across the Skunk Ranch Road Bridge, which is where the groundwater daylights and then dissipates back into the San Antonio Creek alluvium. And the significance of this is multifaceted that we talked about, but the most interesting thing I saw under that bridge today was quite a few fish. And despite how dry it's been, and despite how low water levels are, despite how long of a drought we've been in, there continues to be viable habitat for aquatic vertebrates, fish, in San Antonio Creek in the water discharging from the Ojai Basin. And that's something that's very nice to see, because you would think it's been so dry. We've had the fires, we've had high concentrations of sediment in that system. It's nice to see that vibrancy remaining and sustaining through just about the driest period we have. Thank you.
Thank you. Let's go then to item number 5, public comments on items not appearing on the agenda. Do I have any public comments for tonight on items not on the agenda? Don't all jump at once. All right, now comments from the public tonight. Going to item number 6, which is the consent items. We've got 2. We have to approve the meetings from August 30th and approve our meeting, our minutes from our meeting of September 27th. Starting with the August 30th meeting, looking for a motion to accept the minutes as presented.
Okay. So moved.
Second.
First by Mayor Johnston, seconded by Mr. Baggerly. Can I have a roll call vote, please?
Director Johnston?
Aye.
Director Hayes?
I wasn't on the board for the 30th.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Baggerly?
Yes.
Chair Breen?
Yes. That leads us to the minutes to the meeting for approval of the September 27th, 2018 meeting. Looking to accept a motion to accept as presented.
I'll make a motion.
Second.
First by yes, sir.
Discussion?
Jim.
I do not think I was present,
I know I was not.
We're not.
so that would be a correction.
It definitely
was-
would.
If I was here,
Definitely
I
no.
don't remember it.
All right. With the correction that Mr. Finch was not in attendance, and nor was I, but that's properly reflected.
Emily was gonna try and make it. I thought she did.
She did.
Yeah.
So it should show
So it
it.
should reflect Emily attending?
Yes.
Okay. With the correct, I've lost Emily's Thatcher, right? She's got a-
Ayala. Ayala.
Ayala. With that correction, looking for a motion to accept. I believe Mr. Aegis offered and Mayor Johnston seconded. Can I get a roll call vote, please?
Director Johnston?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Abstain?
Director Baggerly?
Yes.
Chair Breen?
Abstain, was not in attendance. Okay, we've got a request from one of the directors to move one of our items, 8B, to, you want to talk about it before we get to where here, Richard?
Before we get to
7D.
7D.
Okay, so let's go ahead and proceed then with 7A, which is the treasurer's report for September 2018, the budget spreadsheet, and the extraction charges by period. We're charged with reviewing and approving as presented. This is the budget, right? So this is John's work.
No.
Yeah, well, John's down here. Was there anything of significance that you noted as you were, I'm compiling these, CC, that was out of the normal course of our business?
No.
I did not notice anything other that was abnormal. Mr. Munn, do you got anything on that?
We're on B.
Yeah, we're on A, actually. We're on the treasurer's report.
We still owe you an explanation of why the groundwater, I think it's the
We had that weird,
Well-
standby charge, or
The wellhead fee?
wellhead fee is not matching up with what we projected, so.
okay.
And I looked into it. Everyone is paying.
Okay.
So maybe there's just a formula error in there somewhere.
You and I can talk, and then
Yes.
if we see any anomaly in there, well, maybe I just missed it in the math.
I'll make a note to bring it back to us next time, and then we can see if that got reconciled out. Motion to approve the treasurer's report as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Mayor Johnston first, Mr. Finch seconded. Roll call, please.
Director Johnston?
Yes.
Director Hayes?
Yes.
Director Finch?
Yes.
Director Baggerly?
Yes.
Chair Breen?
Yes. Going on to item B, the 2018-19 fiscal year-end budget. Oh, this is an ad, okay, so we're moving on to that particular issue. I think we skipped one of these, didn't we, didn't we? Did I miss a report?
No.
We-
This is all 7A.
All right, so we accepted all of that, all right. Then it looks like on 7B, we're talking about an ad hoc committee appointment.
Well, the board, at your last meeting, I think the board did adopt an ad hoc committee, but there hadn't been a meeting scheduled.
I hear I got put on that. When you're not here, you always get on you always get put on these things, huh? Who do we ultimately put on the committee for the budgeting?
I believe it was Director Hayes and Director Breen.
Yes.
All right, we'll get together and we'll have a conversation about that and bring it back to you all in the next meeting.
You guys want,
Want to set a date?
do you want to set a date and include staff so we can?
Yeah, I do want to include
provide you
staff.
some support?
Let's
Be
see.
nice.
Pick a date real quick here. Excuse me. We're in November, so yeah. I'm gonna be gone November, sometime the week of the 19th to the 21st. Oh, that's Thanksgiving, isn't it? How about the 12th? 12th of November?
All right.
Monday.
Is
Good
that
for
a
you?
holiday?
It does not reflect it on my calendar as a holiday. It is a Veterans Day, yes it is.
It doesn't matter.
But actually, Veterans Day is Sunday, but it's observed on Monday.
Observed on
so-
Monday, all
but-
right. Well, I take every advantage of a market holiday I can get as a broker, so I'll not be working that day. So why don't we do it on the 13th? All right.
On the 12th?
The 13th, we're gonna do it for the 13th, on the Tuesday.
Well, I'm not in the office on the 13th.
All right, we're gonna push this to the down, after this meeting's over, we'll make some phone calls and we'll get this thing organized. I gotta get back to my calendar for the rest of it, I only have part of my calendar in front of me here. Item C, the general work plan.
Well, at your last meeting, you, Director Hages specifically, and the board agreed to bring the work plan back to include the action items that were in the groundwater management plan. And so I've paraphrased those, I've summarized them, because when you look at, and you'll see in your agenda, item 7D, these were the 5 objectives that were in the groundwater management plan, and they're quite lengthy.
Right.
So I tried to, and that's for a discussion item tonight, but I tried to condense that into 5 items to be added into the work plan.
Okay, so of the 5 items that we're gonna get to in 7D here, they're inclusive of this spreadsheet right here I'm looking at?
Yes, they are now.
Okay. Is it identified which of, if they're 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 in this spreadsheet somewhere? Up at the
Yes.
top? They are?
If you look at the first, on item 7C, the work, you got the spreadsheet in front of you?
Mm-hmm, looking right at it?
Okay, bottom, first item, I should have numbered these, might have been easier. The very bottom item on the first page, GWMP Objective 1. And then it goes to Objective 2, 3, 4, and 5 on the second page. And maybe you didn't get the updated copy.
Yeah, I'm not seeing that.
Okay, yes.
Am I? Oh, they are right there. There we go. I see it now. Oh, so you got down to, okay, I see it. All right, so they are
Just
labeled.
tiny.
What, in the stuff that's above, the basin hydrology point is additional work items that are apart from the 5 prior to 5,
That's correct.
Okay.
These were items that were on the plan, work plan that I had submitted to you previously. So this is inclusive of those items and the 5 work plan,
Okay.
or the 5 groundwater management plan objectives.
So, Richard, you'd asked this to be included and get, start flushing out these and starting getting them into this work plan. Is this what you're looking for? Is this the path that you were trying to get us
Yes,
going down?
yes.
Okay.
I mean, we could set some priorities for particular tasks in each objective, and
Okay, so how do we want to set those priorities? Do we want to have an outside committee say, these are our priorities and we're going to do this? Do we want to hash this out in real time in a meeting?
I mean,
Where is our-
currently, they are,
They are prioritized,
it's
right?
a matter of whether we think there's higher priorities or lower priorities.
Some of them will be ongoing.
yeah. My intent was simply to keep these things alive so that we can make progress on them and get reports on the progress.
Okay,
As I was telling Russ, the environment has changed with the potential adjudication, so some of these things, the priority may change.
okay. Are we comfortable with the budget that's been presented on the estimated cost to achieve these goals? It's 20,000 and some change.
And that's
Pretty cheap.
usually over 2, 3, 4 years, so.
Yeah,
All right, so, go ahead.
best guess.
John, let me ask you something about 2B, groundwater objective 2, basin management and protection. The first three words there are monitor basin exports. We don't export anything.
Well, this, as I said, this is right out of our groundwater management plan.
Well,
So-
but I wouldn't use that.
Well, I
unless-
think maybe Jordan can correct me on this, but I believe maybe it's exports, it's water that flows out of the basin that's not being used.
You're not talking about extractions
We're not
then.
talking about extractions, we're
You're
talking
talking
about
about
surface flows,
natural,
those kind of things.
natural flow.
Lost by gravity.
Yeah.
Thank you. Just to make sure that's clear.
No, we don't export water around here. So then basically, then, since we've already gone through the process of bringing you on board to achieve these goals, is our task just to charge you now to get on this and keep reporting back to us and start checking some of this stuff off?
Well, Richard, was it your idea to establish a committee to help out?
Yeah, what were your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think it would, we don't wanna spend all night here, so.
No.
I mean, that would certainly, I'm looking for some direction from the board about what you see as priorities. I can certainly give you my feedback on what I think they should be. And certainly Jordan, I think, needs to chime in as well, even though we've labeled it as a general manager work plan. There's gonna be a lot of work for a lot of us in these tasks.
Would you like to tackle this task at the same time we do the budget with the same folks? I have no problem with that if the rest of the board is
They're related, so.
comfortable going down that road and having us report back and bringing in a top 2 or 3 priorities where we can start, really getting something going here.
This may require more than one committee.
Okay. More than one committee to prioritize, or more than
No,
one committee to understand the
actually-
priorities?
Do work.
Well, and you might, to go along with Director Baggerly's comment, you may want a standing committee to go through this on occasion, have reviews, and come back and report to the board on progress.
Let me go with this, Russ.
I think the budget is separate and distinct. It's sort of related because it's going to cost money. Nevertheless, the issues that we want to complete with these tasks are not related to the budget, except that we're going to be paying for them.
So it sounds like you got to volunteer for a new committee.
It sounds like it.
2 people to do it,
But
Richard and me.
Mr. Finch?
I would actually argue for a committee of the whole. I think now with these 5 included, if we all read through and agree or feel strongly that something is of a completely different priority and needs to be moved up or down, then it seems more logical that the committee of 2 for budgets, and I realize that's all a committee can be in these, is fine, but in this, people might have different opinions on it. So I think we hash it out in the whole, and then it's, in any given time frame, you're probably working on 3 at the most.
Agreed.
You're
You're
right.
not working on the full list. So I don't think it's.
I don't have a problem with that. I was actually thinking about your workload. If we're going to have the committee of the whole, the full board, we're not going to get a lot done once a month.
But it's really what you're talking about on the committee is going through the prioritization. Or am I missing something?
No, you're not missing it, and bringing it back to the board saying these are the 3 things we're going to work on. We don't have to agree.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I think if what you're suggesting is that some of us actually do some work,
Yeah.
that can be assigned when we decide at a full board what the task is. And
Okay.
it could be assigned to someone.
Well,
And-
in that regard, then the full board is fine with me.
And let me review these priorities, just so you recall. Priority 1, and then there's A, B, and C, and D. Number 1 is a regulatory requirement, so we have to do that as an agency. Number 2 are things that the agency wants to get done as part of groundwater management plans, not necessarily a regulatory requirement, but things you want to do, move forward with. And then item 3, or priorities 3, are items that you'd like to do, but you don't have to do. And you may want to change that, and then you may want to give sub-priorities within that to say, these are the most important items we want you to focus on first within these general priorities.
Am I missing something? Are there threes?
Yeah, I don't have.
I don't see threes.
Oh, should be a second page. Well, there may not, yeah. There isn't any, I'm sorry, but
Got
there is
1As
there is a three category, but we just don't have anything assigned.
All right.
Those are desire to accomplish, and then certainly you have subcategories of that. Current year, 2 to 3 years, 5 years, or greater than 5 years.
Okay, well, for my money, the two things that I know that are critical for us to do are the conjunctive use agreement with Casitas and nailing down the perched aquifer separation from the deep aquifers.
Flesh that out for me a little bit there. Deep aquifers from the,
Yeah, and we are attempting to show that the perched the shallower aquifers are not being affected by extractions from wells that are deeper, okay? And Jordan's been working on that for quite some time.
but is that in these goals that John's put out for us? Is it a line item here? I mean, conjunctive use is part of one of the management plan goals, which is going to be number 2B.
Conjunctive use is, but I think we need to,
Second page, first item.
yeah.
So conjunctive use is in 2B. So this other item that you just discussed, where does that fall into this matrix?
Is it specifically cited in the plan? Is that something that
Ye-
came up after?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Well,
Conjunctive use is in the plan.
no, I
And
mean
and-
the surface flows that come from the perch zone.
That's right, and how it affects San Antonio Creek.
Right.
We said we would continue monitoring that to show
Yeah,
that,
Which isn't listed here.
but it's part of
It's part of the plan, so
the plan.
Yeah, but it's not.
not.
I'll make
not
sure it gets
itemized.
clarified.
Could be put
I'll clarify
within
them.
one of those.
Yeah, I'll clarify it.
The way they read.
And what was the second thing, Russ, you said, besides conjunctive use? What,
we need to continue to, I don't know what the words would be, to prove that the perched aquifers are still discharging to San Antonio Creek for the habitat of groundwater. What- Thank you. I never remember that stupid phrase. So it's critically important for both the plan, our alternative demonstration, and our longevity. If we have to do a groundwater sustainability plan, we're in trouble.
What does it take to get this done?
This is something that it's really multifaceted, and it overlaps several of the objectives that are listed in this outline. And it's something that if we had our druthers, we'd be drilling a handful of depth-specific, depth-discrete monitoring wells throughout the lower portion of the basin where the perched aquifer system is. But it starts with more of a study of what's already out there and available, so that we don't have to drill new holes to figure out what's there when there are already holes there with decent data, as well as longer-term water level data from, say, the environmental leaky underground storage tank from gas stations, monitoring sites, and things of that nature, as well as geotechnical borings. So this is something that was touched on in our groundwater management plan, and then further elucidated in the Wildlife Conservation Board grant application that went out a couple months back. And I know there's been some discussions with the city about implementing this sort of investigation to further really understand that perched layer and its role in the hydrology of the basin, as well as, and specifically, underlying the city limits. So part of what we ought to do is draft a really detailed work plan with respect to that study. And it's something that we can work on with the city and the city's consultants to this effect, and really isolate that plan of studying what's out there, establishing the limits of this perching layer, the water quality and quantity therein, as well as how it can be affected via either stormwater infiltration, recharge projects, things of that nature. So it's something that is, it's a long-term goal to be able to establish it, but every time we take a bite of that apple, we get a bit more information. For example, monitoring the creek today, as we do frequently, when we observe that flow and see an ecosystem flourishing, if for want of a better term, if not existing or thriving, and demonstrating that that is above the elevation of the basin production zone water levels. Every time we collect a data point to that effect, it reifies that hypothesis. And the more things we do to investigate and establish that, the stronger that argument becomes.
Is the work plan part of the grant, or do we have to have a work plan to qualify for the grant?
I believe there's enough of flexibility within the grant to conduct this kind of a work plan. So if the grant is awarded, we won't know for some time. But if it is awarded, then we would have a budget to really shake that out.
A head start.
Yeah.
But at this point, if there's not a grant, there's not a budget for us to execute this project?
Other than what the OBGMA or the city has, independent of grant funds.
Okay, and are we contemplating as a board here just put money towards that, or are we gonna wait for a grant to cross us off the list to pay for it?
Well, it sounds like we need, it wouldn't take too much to do the work plan.
Right.
And then from that, you could start honing in on what.
Yeah, and I think that is a good approach, is we could write a work plan that's 4 or 5 pages long and have some detailed graphics in it as to where our study would lead us, what steps we would take, and what, if we had property to put depth-specific or depth-discrete monitoring wells in, where they would be, as well as preliminary designs. And it's something that we could work, Care Groundwater could work both with the OBGMA and the city and the city's consultants to help out in that regard, in a collaborative effort.
Go ahead, Russ.
Jordan, those wells that we removed from the basin boundary on the southern portion, clear down by San Antonio Creek, they were old oil wells, as I recall, and the alluvium was way too thin to be legal, correct?
So the portion of the Ojai Basin that was originally delineated in Bulletin 118 based on the 1960s 1 to 250,000 scale geologic maps included portions of alluvium that, while alluvium at the surface was either too thin, disconnected, or known to have very salty water or very oily water, tar in some cases, that was originated from bedrock formations. So that part of the area that, with the redelineation in 2016 of the basin boundaries, now excludes the locations of those shallow or, frankly, too deep wells that are either not water wells or non-productive.
Are they completely abandoned?
I don't know the status of all of them.
Would they serve as a depth discrete monitoring well?
Those ones that are outside of the basin are probably only good for monitoring San Antonio Creek alluvium.
Yeah.
And there are a handful that exist that we could target for that. But as far as new construction, there are probably some wells within the central portion of the basin that may be potentially abandoned that could be modified for becoming depth specific.
And would your work plan include some idea of what it would cost the district to convert one of those old wells to, or a well to a depth discrete monitoring well, so
Yes,
that we can use
yes.
it for the study? Okay, thanks.
Okay, so Russ has got a couple of ideas that he thinks are a priority. Anybody else want to, from your, what is the city looking for as a priority? I mean, it's time for us to start assigning these tasks and starting and crossing them off the list and getting these things done. So I'm looking for guidance as to how we want to achieve that goal. Do each of us want to take a task and be personally in charge of it to get it off the list and work with staff until it's gone and keep reporting back to us, you know, what you're doing each month? Or do we want to pick 3 or 4 of them and collectively grind away at them until they're crossed off and we pick 3 or 4 more? I'm looking for some,
Well, I think if we, if we select 2 or 3, we don't have
Get
a
going.
large workforce here.
Yeah.
Select 2 or 3 that are high priority and get going on those and then see what comes from that. As part of the reason I wanted to discuss the other items first, to see how the potential adjudication might change our priorities and what we may want to attack.
well, let's do this. Let's drop into 7D right now. Let's talk about what these 5 objectives are of the groundwater plan, and then we can loop back to what we're going to pull out of the general work plan and make a priority. Does that sound like a reasonable way to go here? So that we can have a quick review of what these 5 objectives are. They're delineated here, obviously. They're right on here. But do we want to touch base on what these 5 objectives are? Because these are the 5 that are at the end of the list, except for the one at 1A at the bottom. So you know, just in review, do you want to go? Who wants to review these? Mr. Aegis, you want to tackle that review of the 5 objectives? Or you just want me to run through them real quick?
Well, you can run through them really quick, but what I originally asked was to have the item on the adjudication lawsuit.
Well, before we got to that,
Before-
sorry, you actually did specifically ask me that
might
question, and
change how we view this.
well, then, we already agreed we're gonna do that. Sorry about that. Thank you for reminding me. Let's have a quick conversation about that, and then we'll circle back to 7D.
Well, before you do
Go
that,
ahead.
okay. Item 2B, Objective 3, support artificial recharge opportunities. It's something we've talked about for a long time, and that's slow it, sink it, store it.
Right.
And contour replenishment is a cheap way of doing things. Swales, I don't know, I think that's something that we can find the ways and means to actually help our area recharge our basin when it rains.
And clearly, that's one of that's in the management plan. So let's do the 8B, and then this real quick, and then we'll get to 7D, and then John will give you some direction as to what we're doing here. So who wants to bring us up to speed on the Santa Barbara Channel Keeper versus City of Ventura? I was just served this morning, so it's news. It is not news to me, but I am just getting through the complaint itself. Mr. Aegis, got something on that?
Well, I haven't been served and won't be, because I don't want to well. But
The new dynamic, so just,
Yes.
define it for us.
I wanted to avoid the legal issues as much as we can, but since this organization is not a party to this lawsuit so far, and City of Ojai is not a party to this lawsuit so far, we could talk about it in general terms, how it may affect our organization and how it may affect our constituents. I've done a little bit of, talked to a few people, some attorneys. There's a lot of attorneys that are salivating over this because it could be a career maker. From what I understand, in a brief summary of this, the Santa Barbara Channel Keepers filed a suit against the City of Ventura for the city to reduce pumping in near Foster Park from their wells because the flows in the river were not sufficient. And that took place several years ago. And then the city of Ventura assumed they didn't want to take this on all by themselves, so they did a blanket lawsuit, including everyone else that pumps water or diverts water on the watershed. And that's why individuals are being served and agencies are being served that are affected by this. So what I've concluded from this is that for us, we have 3 choices. There may be more, but I've only been able to identify 3. And one is just grin and bear it, go down the adjudication route It'll probably take a decade at least. We'll all spend a lot of money on lawyers, and we're gonna have to spend a lot of money on studies and data gathering and that sort of thing. The other, seems to be an option that's being floated out there that for some reason the State Water Resources Control Board might be interested in working with us and the various plaintiffs to come to some kind of a settlement, and they're holding the carrot out that they have millions of dollars that they could contribute to doing some of the work that may need to be done to avoid adjudication. Along with that will come some strings attached to that money, and they're gonna want us to comply with their various policies they may have. And either one, you know, that one probably may be better than adjudication, I don't know, it depends on your position. The third option is one that may not have a lot of hope, but it seems to me that if we want to keep this thing in the community and be in charge of our own destiny, all of the parties to this all live here, all live on the watershed. All the agencies involved are on the watershed. So I think there should be at least an attempt to try to get together with City of Ventura particularly, and get some idea of what exactly they're after, particularly when it relates to the Ojai Basin. I don't think the Ojai Basin is a huge chunk of what they're considering part of their claimed water right. But I think if we had a better understanding of what exactly it is they expect out of the Ojai Basin groundwater users, we might have a better idea of what direction we're gonna go with this. I know the Ventura River is a lot more complicated, and they kind of had a late start. I mean, our organization's been here for a long time, or not a long time, but a couple of decades. And we have we've done studies, we have a lot of data. It's small, so we're able to kind of keep control of it. But the Ventura River is a much more complicated situation. So one of the things that I would suggest is that maybe the OBGMA is, since we're not a plaintiff or not a party to this, is reach out to the City of Ventura and at least see if we can start a dialogue so they can explain exactly what they're expecting from us, and so we can start to see what direction at least the OBGMA can go in collecting data and potentially doing studies, or if we're going to deal with the State Water Resources Control Board, what direction we'd like to go with them. I don't think it would hurt. I'm not suggesting we have lawyers meet together. I just think just lay people meet with their staff and see what their position is and what they expect to do. So that's all I have.
You mind?
No, I don't. Go ahead.
Richard, I don't disagree with you, and talking with people can't hurt, but our attorney has been through adjudications before, and since he's not here, I would rather wait until next month, because there's not going to be any hurry about this issue for some time, and if we're going to have discussions about it, I'd like him present.
From Casitas' attorney, or our Peter Candy, or Mr. Candy. Okay,
Yeah.
okay. Makes certain sense. Any other comments regarding this?
The thing I'm not quite sure of is that we may actually be a part of this, and I don't know how that's going to work. We got notice, we didn't get the summons like the well owners have gotten, so I don't know how it actually is going to work legally for the four groundwater basins that were listed in the notice.
Yeah, obviously, go ahead, Jim.
So, I'm one of those who received my summons several times. And while I'm all for talking as lay people, unfortunately, I think they may be advised, not to talk as a lay person because they are a party to this now. So I think what we can do is what we have been doing. I mean, ourselves and the United type people have the tremendous data that this would require and draw upon. And that Sigma is addressing these very issues, and it's unfortunate that it can't just play out a little farther, because that's what the groundwater management plan will accomplish, looking at all attributes, I guess, is groundwater and surface and ecosystem. But for whatever reason, it's been brought to the forefront. So I don't see how our agency can do much more than what we do of collecting data and monitoring and doing the groundwater plan. And then on all other things, I also would say, let's kick this till we have council present.
A lot of people have called because there's a 30-day response.
And we have that letter
Just
that we were
keep
handing
telling-
out
Yeah.
at
Oh,
Ojai Day. And I think that is the proper response. You could pick it up, we can fax it to you, we can email it to you. But I don't think we as directors or you as staff should say anything other than here's the letter from the attorney.
Okay,
It's
that's why if people are just concerned.
it's not, I don't think it's our place.
It's a little premature as well.
Yeah.
I mean, like the email from Peter says, the court is shifting over to a complex court system. They're not ready yet to deal with this. And until they are ready, no one's going to hear back from the court about what to do. They have to develop this form and have it approved by the court. And then that has to be sent out again to everybody who got a summons.
But he's not an attorney.
I'm not,
He wasn't served.
and I don't give out legal advice.
So, yeah.
Okay, so the question then is that does this
Well-
suit affect the work product that we're asking from our general manager? Is because we've got this suit coming down the line, does the work plan change, or does because the suit's coming down the line and it's, months out, we don't exactly know what that looks like, there's nothing there that will affect what we're trying to direct Mr. Mundy to accomplish?
Can I suggest something?
Yes, sir.
If you don't mind. You had the discussion with Jordan about work plan, looking at the purge zone and the basin. Probably most of you, Richard knows and Russ knows, I was a city employee 25 years ago. I was a city water superintendent for Ventura. And I know how the city, at least back then, worked, was they're always interested in protecting, and Richard, you remember, protecting the water and the watershed so they ensure that they get plenty, that they can serve the residents. If that's the case, and considering the Ojai Basin is not maybe a significant portion of that flow into the watershed, but it is a portion, and they certainly made a lot of noise about San Antonio Creek over the years, I think the work plan that was mentioned earlier is something that needs to move forward as a higher priority, so that we can help define, well, what is really the outflow of the basin? What do people use in the basin? And what does the city maybe get out of the basin compared to what they think they get?
Yeah, I agree. I think this action by the city isn't about an overdraft of the Ojai Basin. This is about whatever water migrates from the basin downstream to the Ventura River. So it may be prudent to start focusing more on the impacts to surface flow and underground flows that leave the basin as it relates to basin level. Because, if you just from a simple point of view, if we didn't pump any water out of the basin, it would all flow downhill to the city of Ventura. So.
Not all of it, some of it's gonna stay in the basin, can't get
Well,
out.
The overflow, yeah, the overflow. But that's a question though, at what point does that stop?
Yeah.
And to what degree? So I think it's gonna be important that we focus on those things, like the purge zone. That's kind of more of a riparian habitat issue. But, how much water, do we know how much water migrates on average downstream to the confluence? And is it Ojai Basin water, is it upper Ojai water? Is it Silver Mountain, where does it come from? And so I think focusing on that a little bit, will help get us prepared for what may happen, because I don't think the city gives a rat about how much one well user uses up here. It's about how collectively the impact flows downstream, if we did.
And that's two-pronged. That's for the adjudication and for the in-stream flow study that's still on its way. And we need these studies to intensify so that we know what we're talking about when it happens.
Okay, so this suit does make priorities for us on the workflow, and that workflow would be, doing things that are gonna get in front of a lawsuit that we can provide information to mitigate whatever needs to be mitigated, so we can be an information source for that process, okay? What I think we should do then is, take these three choices, go through the process, you had another one, the State Water Resource Control Board, and the plan is resolving it or going directly to the city. Let's take those three items, let's bring them in to the next meeting when Mr. Candy is here, have him talk about that, and then, get his opinion from a legal standpoint on that, and then, go ahead.
I disagree.
All right.
We need to focus our staff on the study, the work plan that was outlined tonight.
That's a
the
different question than how we should
The only
interact
thing,
with them
the
on
only thing that
general.
Peter can help us with is understanding the first steps of this adjudication process, which is totally different than protecting ourselves down the road with our studies.
It's also appropriate for Mr. Hayes just to be able to ask us questions of our attorney and see whether or not it makes any sense.
Sure.
Well, I think it's a legal issue as to whether or not the state board, I understand that there's a way the state board could offer us some shelter from this if we do certain things that they want us to do, and that's gonna require a legal opinion, so I think we should talk about that too, because that's being floated out there now.
Okay.
I haven't heard that, and that's awfully vague.
And who is we?
Yeah.
Who is we when you say we?
We.
Or they.
What I said, because I don't know.
I didn't know whether that was saying we OBGMA, we Ojai water users. So anyway.
Well, I think, it's individual, from what I understand, there are mechanisms for individual water users to actually make deals with the state board in exchange for grants to improve their irrigation methods or whatever it may be. And there's methods for an organization like us to accept grants if we enforce certain restrictions or agree to do certain things in regards to monitoring and regulating pumping. It even goes down, from what I understand, all the way down to a single parcel, that there may be money available for a single parcel if they want to agree to use a limited amount of water or,
Or
implement
no
certain.
water.
Or no water, yes.
Yeah. More the latter than the
Yes.
other, right?
It's sort of, it's not adjudication, but it's, I think it would result in individual agreements with various parties who want to participate, and those who don't want to participate would not be sheltered from the adjudication process. That's my understanding. And believe me, I just had a brief discussion with an attorney about it. He basically selling his wares, but it seems like something that is plausible. I don't know if it's desirable. I'm just saying that's something we ought to be aware of, because I think you're going to start to hear more about that.
Well, there is a possibility that the attorney for the city, Best and Krieger, will include every parcel in the watershed, because everybody has a water right. And that may be part of the adjudication. They've done it in other areas. So it can get really hairy.
Yeah, I don't disagree, and comes down to whether or not we can fight this out among ourselves, or we're gonna let someone else, like the State Water Resource Control Board or a judge, come in and take care of it for us.
Yeah, because, my concern is that we should be doing everything to make sure that we don't become irrelevant.
Yeah.
And that's that's my at the
Who's
largest
we?
level, we, the agency, the
Okay.
people sitting at this table,
Okay,
the
I
people that
just-
we represent.
I just,
Yeah.
I just,
Yeah,
Pronouns
the
are
agency should, that we become
Pronouns.
irrelevant
Yeah, no,
because
I
of how this gets settled out. And to the extent that, you know, there's, the State Water Resource Board wants to get involved in this process, you know, we are a state agency. We're, you know, so we gotta protect our turf and make sure that we're keeping these decisions in the valley for the folks that we represent, not letting it get away from us. That's the reason I came here to begin with, and it's more of a concern as we're having this conversation.
Well, and I think this work plan, as we've discussed, and certainly talking with the attorney, those are proactive issues that the agency wants to undertake, so they stay ahead of this instead of just kind of waiting, sitting back to see what happens. I think that's a mistake, personally.
Actually, John, we've committed to this very thing in the groundwater management plan and in our annual report and in the alternative demonstration.
Okay, so, go ahead.
And I think we should at least be aware that some of the things that we want to do, like enhance recharge,
Yeah.
may be challenged. So we may want to move our focus to developing the data and the studies that we need to defend ourselves before we leap into something like that and wind up being challenged. I mean, San Antonio Creek spreading grounds were challenged. So
Yeah.
I would expect all of those kind of things are going to be challenged as well.
Okay, so let's leave those three items here, and if you want to bring them back to it when Mr. Candy's here, we can discuss those if you'd like. And that rolls us back into 7C, which is the
Before you,
work. Yes,
excuse
sir.
me, before you move into that,
Mhm.
I will add this on the, work with Ms. Vandermeer to put this on the agenda, but I also think in the event it's needed, I'll add a closed session item as well. You may not have it, you may not need it, you may not be able to justify it, but at least it'll be on the agenda.
All right.
But you'll also have an open discussion item for this as well,
Okay, can I make a suggestion?
please.
When you print up the scenarios for the three items, don't do it in font size 6. Make it a little bigger. It's hard to read.
Oh, you're having a problem reading the spreadsheet here?
I got my
Anyway.
glasses, it's not
So
working.
to wrap this up, going back
No,
to.
don't wrap it up. I want to ask a
Yes, sir.
question.
Go ahead.
Okay. It sounds like that we're, even though we do not produce water ourselves as an agency, that we're going to be drawn into it and be sued later. Is that what I'm hearing?
Let me read it to you. Pursuant to California Civil Procedure Code Section 385, the City of San Buenaventura hereby provides you with notice of its commencement of a comprehensive adjudication of the Ventura River watershed, including its 4 groundwater basins. I think that's pretty clear. We're going to be drawn into it, as you said, Johnny, whether we like it or not.
But I don't think necessarily we as an agency will be a party. Those basins and the users will be.
Right, that's,
We'll see
We
how,
may not.
we'll see how it plays out.
And
If nothing else, maybe we can be, you know, the
and there was also a suggestion that the city of Ventura, being represented by legal counsel, wouldn't talk to any of us. Is that what I was hearing?
I wouldn't if I were them.
that's
but
just a
that's-
guess. That's a guess.
Okay,
Like,
but
Or just
well,
guess.
why not give them the opportunity to
That's the
tell us
reason
they
why I
don't want to
wanted bring
talk
this
to
up.
us?
That's the reason I asked to
But-
bring this
but
back
you
when
see-
Mr. Candy's here.
You see that Peter Candy, our attorney, has already called BBK and talked to both of the attorneys listed in this notice and the summons. So he got some specific information about how to proceed. There's no reason why, if we want other information, that our attorney can't get it as well.
Well, I think the type of communication that goes on among attorneys versus people who are managing the organization is much different. So I'm very willing to wait for Mr. Candy's comments on this, but in my experience, I've had a lot more luck meeting with various parties to something like this without the attorneys to try to get down to the basics of what everyone's trying to accomplish. The attorneys are in it to win. And the people who are actually managing it and trying and are responsible for delivering water to people or managing people's property, I think may have a different point of view, or we may learn something from them. I just,
Yeah, well, we pay him for his opinion, and we
Yeah.
show up we pay him for his expert opinion. Our opinions are, just free.
Right, but is his opinion that we're to be muzzled? Is that the advice we're being given, or is that,
No,
There's no
it's just,
advice.
when there's litigation involved, the parties
That's
don't
the attorney.
generally talk. Yeah.
right, but that's usually when the party's been named, and it seems like, I'm not sure what we have to lose by exploring. They may have something that they don't like, and they just close the door in our
Might
face.
be 100% right. Let's ask him. Ask Mr. Candy and go that route. When's our next meeting anyway? Just offhand, as I'm thinking
It's
about this.
December 4th.
So we're kind of pushed this out. All right.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Comment?
Yes, sir.
Richard, I assume you're talking about the attorney that's part of the process of the Wildlife Conservation Board grant. When I've been dealing with them,
Tom,
No?
Tom Hicks,
yes.
yeah, okay, so that, what you're talking about, I think, is part of the process of the Wildlife Conservation Board grant. If the planning efforts lead to projects that lead to implementation, then what he's talking about would be part of the agreement of going ahead with the implementation project, because if you develop the water with their money, you've got to commit it to the in-stream use, basically. And we're gonna have, he's been reaching out to a lot of people. Ventura River Water District is gonna have a meeting with him next week to
Which,
explore possibilities of this, so I think we're talking about the same thing that's part of that bigger process.
A lot of moving parts here.
unfortunately, we don't control the water, we control the pumpers.
Yeah. You're in charge of the water that flows. We're in charge of the pumping. Anyway, taking the three items that Mr. A just brought up, bringing them back in front of Mr. Kennedy when he is here, rolling back to item 7C, which is the work management plan, work plan, and approve of the plan. So we have a consensus that our priorities for the plan should be those items that will get in front of showing that we're good keepers of our water and that we're not overdrafting, and giving data that will assist in everyone understanding what is actually flowing out of the valley and downstream. Does that seem a good summary of what we've just had a conversation for about half an hour here?
Effectively implementing the groundwater management plan is a document that will serve as demonstration that the OBGMA is acting as a de facto water master of the San Antonio Creek drainage basin.
What he said.
A tributary to the Ventura River watershed, which is the matter of this potential adjudication. So thereby demonstrating that we're able to do it here, it can also be done in the watershed as a whole.
Hoorah.
But what was just said is exactly a perfect summary where we're looking to. So that leads us to the issue of, do we want the board to take a motion to push this as a priority, or do we want to adopt the larger work plan and know that within that plan, we already have priorities?
I think we just did that. And what I'd really like to know is, since it's on the agenda as an action item, is our discussion worthy of a motion to get it moving faster?
I'll entertain any motion.
Go ahead, Jim.
Wasn't the work plan,
He added to the work plan, so we did approve a work plan
Plan,
previously,
yeah.
and then this plan's been added on to.
Well-
but it's always gonna be a living document. I mean,
Exactly.
some of these will never disappear. They never
Yeah.
should. They're always gonna be there.
And I guess
ongoing.
I did this for guidance for all of us.
Yeah.
So it gives us something to kind of focus on, realizing it's gonna change over time. It also gives the board to something to look at on a regular basis, because we should be giving this to you regularly and say, where are we at on these items? And some of these items, you don't really need to tell me to do it, we have to do it anyways.
Okay.
You
Right.
know, like the website requirement that we have to put in place by January 1st. okay, under state law. So so things are gonna happen anyways, irrespective. But hearing the discussion tonight, it helps us understand where you want us to focus on these items as far as your priorities.
Well, one of the things we discussed, and I think we generally agreed, is that developing a work plan for that purge zone is something we want to,
Do now.
yes.
And if we go to the, kind of jumping back to 7D a little bit, these aren't page numbers, but you describe it this way. In the artificial recharge component, at the top of the page, that's for the third or fourth page from the end of that document. At the very bottom there, it says lower basin spreading grounds. And what we wrote here was, given the understanding that the upper stratigraphic portions of the basin near the city of Ojai contribute more directly to the surface flow in San Antonio Creek than other portions of the basin, a collection of roof and hardscape water in a convenient location for shallow aquifer recharge, and the acronym is SHAC, would benefit the basin discharge to the habitat and basins downstream. And here's the really the directive. A detailed feasibility study should be conducted in partnership with the city, OBGMA, and potentially a funding entity. Site selection, depths of excavations if needed, and multi-use considerations would all be essential components, in addition to hydrogeologic factors. So that kind of feasibility study sounds like the directive that would start the work plan that I was describing earlier this evening.
You would do a feasibility study first.
Correct.
And develop the work plan out of the results of that.
Correct.
Well, the plan's approved, the employees are here to implement the plan. I don't know that we need to tell them anything other than make it a priority and get it done.
No, I think that really when you look at it, the estimated date of implementation tells as much about priority and where we're gonna, as long as we're on board with that, knowing that, hey, it's due in late 19, it's due on a set date specific annually. The only one that comes to question is the one that was due in 1905.
Yeah, that's a
That
tough
one's
one
the
to
only-
meet.
Yeah, sorry about that.
What date is that supposed to
It's
be?
done.
Yeah, exactly.
Overlay.
Well, I think a feasibility analysis is first, then a work plan. We're gonna put together a budget, so we're gonna need some idea of what that's gonna cost, how much time it's gonna take. And if we approve the item in the budget, then it should have a
Move
high
ahead.
priority, yes,
Yeah.
move ahead. So can you provide us with those estimates?
Yes.
Thank you.
Are we done?
And we'd like that for the budget committee meeting.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah, we can do, when we meet on the budget committee, we can look at that, and then we can bring it back to this agency at our next meeting, tell you the cost of it, and get it going. All right, so then the priority, just as a general overview then, is we're looking at these, aside for the date-specific stuff that's due on date specifics, right now, the priority is to develop projects and complete projects that, what you exactly said, Mr. Keurig. All right.
That proposal in short order.
Thank you. All right. Was there any other items then? We basically have covered 7D by reviewing the work plan, because the work plan was inclusive of these objectives, unless you want to re-review each of these objectives independently.
Well, Russ brought up the conjunctive use
And the conjunctive use, but Russ, you're already
Yeah.
plan or whatever it is.
Jordan and I are already working on that. When we have a draft, we will bring it back to the board, and then we'll take it to Casitas and have them review it.
Okay.
Is there-
Is there any due date on that?
No, there's no due date, but we want to get it done sooner rather than later.
All right, I got one item left here. 8A, water meter installation requirements. What are we asking new to be done here?
Well, I had in my notes to bring something back for discussion on this item, and so what I included in your agenda was Ordinance 8, which actually set the requirement for installing meters
Right.
on all wells by 2011. And so I don't think there's been any kind of enforcement activity, and I wasn't here at the time. I was still fully gainfully employed by somebody else. but I wanted you to see this, and so, and then we also had an ordinance that was passed, or excuse me, a resolution in 2015 that talked about, oh, did we get the wrong one? I'm
No,
sorry.
you had the right one. It's 2015-1.
Oh, yeah, but I think, yeah, there were some issues related to this one as far as using the estimated quarterly demands. But we had also put together, I believe there was an ordinance and then a resolution that talked about meter testing. And that was done in 2015 as well, I believe. And there was a requirement in there that testing had to begin for all well owners by I think 2000, or actually we did that in 14, and we had to start the testing in 2015. And that didn't happen either. And so I think there's some things that we need to go back, look at these ordinances, clean some things up, and maybe set some new target dates, and make sure the board's comfortable with that, and make sure we understand what it means for enforcement, getting everybody on board, putting in their meters, and, you know, how long it possibly going to take.
And the, go ahead, Jim.
How many reports do you get that are not meter driven? Yes.
30,
And the total number we get is,
140.
so,
And it's, yeah, well, some people are not pumping, they're
Right.
dry, something like that, but, yeah.
Well, the prior board decided that the SIGMA, the Sustainable Groundwater Quality Act, that allows for overlooking the extractions of de minimis users of 2 acre-feet per year, was not really what we wanted to do, because we wanted exact measurement of what's happening in our basin. I know it sounds like a small amount, but if we're going to be accurate, we should get all of them doing the same thing. But the other side of that coin is that the crop factor is to our benefit, not them. It makes them pay more for those 2 acre-feet. But we did make a decision that we were not going to disallow the de minimis users.
Yeah, and that was clear. You said by 2011, all pumpers would have meters.
Yes.
So, which includes a de minimis. And of those 30, most of them are de minimis users, would you say? Yeah.
so the situation is we've got de minimis users, we're looking at making them, mandating them to put a meter on, and that's gonna be a
Yeah.
cost of them for.
Well, it'll be a cost,
volumes
and
of water.
you're probably talking about capturing, if they're an acre foot or less, you're talking 30 acre feet a year,
Money is
maybe, out of 3,000 to 5,000 acre feet that's pumped out of the basin each year.
Talking about $25?
25 times 30.
Okay.
Yeah, well, I mean, they still pay the fees,
Pay the
Yeah, they
fee.
still pay the
Okay.
flat
You're
fee,
not-
but,
they're just not paying any usage.
but they are a pretty small percentage of the
They're still
total.
paying the usage fee.
Yeah,
They just put down,
Well, they just put down to
Yeah.
1 or 2 or whatever.
it's just not
They
metered.
usually pay, a minimum is half,
Right.
half an acre foot.
So the question is how much do we want to upset people by mandating, forcing this resolution into that system, on them? And enforcing?
What-
and the reality of it is, you're probably gonna get better information by calibrating larger meters than the effect
Yeah.
of these small 30.
All right, so maybe the priority is if we want to enforce these as a calibration project,
Well, I
somehow
think,
we put together?
yeah, I mean, based upon the discussion so far, 30 meters is not going to gain you a lot of
Maybe
water
calibration of
numbers.
my water meter,
I
because
think
we're using water,
im-
might find some extra use.
Implementing the calibration, the testing requirements, and people repairing meters when they're not working or they're not adequately meeting their standard, or probably a higher priority than making 30 people.
Creating a lot of
do
work for yourself over there.
He
And I-
was on vacation.
Well, how
Wait, doesn't the, I'm sorry.
Do we have any idea of how much in compliance all of the major pumpers are? I mean, is everyone metered?
The major ones.
We
Oh, yeah, all the major ones are metered, yeah,
Do we know that?
yeah.
In an adjudication, is there going to be sort of a default amount for the de minimis user? Or is there any kind of incentive why they would want to put a meter in order to establish their right?
Good point.
Could
It may
but
be,
Don't they look historically?
but
don't have any-
historically,
Crop
de minimis.
factors. That's something we need to ask Peter. I don't think we can answer that tonight, Johnny.
10 years from now, today will be historic.
Okay, let's pull this, I need to review all this, I didn't have a chance to crush through each of these, I read them really quickly to see where we're at. Go
I
ahead,
have one
Ms.
more question.
Ma'am.
Well, no.
Isn't under Sigma, everyone's required to have a meter?
No,
Oh, no.
there's
No,
a
they-
de minimis user. Anything under 2 acre-feet per year doesn't have to do that.
Okay.
But our attorney has indicated since OBGMA has its own regulations, they would supersede Sigma in that regard, if you chose to move forward in that
Well,
direction.
the language was, if you have regulated them before Sigma, you can continue to do that,
And you did.
and we did.
What does it cost to calibrate a meter? What are we looking at here? I haven't thought of this.
That's not the problem, is trying to get,
it's actually trying to get the person to do it.
and
Trying to
that's,
find someplace to do it.
Finding a person that can do meter
That is-
calibration.
Yeah,
Right.
In my view, it's akin to the backflow programs that were in place by cities probably 20 years ago.
Right.
It required backflow devices on properties. You had to get the owners to put them in, you had to get them to pay for it, and then you had to have annual testing on the devices. And some agencies chose to actually have their own testing crews working for the city or the water district, and then charge the owner. And then in other places, they decided to say, here's a deadline, if you don't get it by this date, we're gonna send somebody out and you're gonna pay for it anyways.
But that's already in our resolution anyway,
So,
right?
so it's kind of a mixed bag in this stuff, of getting people to,
isn't that the
respond.
problem?
No, we don't have
California
a
Edison, Jim.
bucket of money, but, you know, you can think about this for the future. It might be more efficient to include the cost of meter testing in their pumping fees so that it can just be done on a regular basis. We don't have to haggle with each individual well owner.
yeah, and quite frankly,
Charge the well owner
Yeah.
a meter testing fee?
And
Testing and calibration is extremely expensive.
Edison the easiest one that is accepted by Fox Canyon is the Edison tests, and then it's not,
Just a
but-
power calculation.
based on that. But
Do they certify it?
they don't certify it.
That's the problem.
That's but it is,
That's the problem
closest
with you
to-
guys as the agency.
But otherwise, I have not, on another place, I have not been able to find anybody that would do it.
yeah.
It's
In a previous life, I had probably 50 meters reporting to the Regional Water Quality Control Board. I had to go through each of them annually and calibrate them. They were from 2-inch to 14-inch, and the cost was phenomenal. I went and installed electronic mag meters specifically because the Regional Water Quality Control Board would accept field testing calibration of them, and the cost for us after the first year went way down.
Yeah, that would be part of the problem. We have, who knows how many different kinds of meters, I suppose.
Yeah.
So that makes it even worse.
Yeah, even the barometer pillar meters. In the ag end, we had 2 meters. Yank one, put the other one in,
and send it
Right.
off.
send it back to Hemet, have
Right.
it calibrated, get it back, but you're still looking at, for 3 to 5 inch, you're still looking at $500 to get that sucker yanked,
Ouch.
sent back, calibrated,
and have the certificate and deliver it to her.
When we first developed the resolution requirements for testing, we actually modeled it after what the Fox Canyon did. And so I guess the conversation we need to have with Fox Canyon, well, what are you doing? And how are you testing and how do you follow up on that? Quite frankly, after working in the industry for 40 years and working on potable water meters and large production meters, large meters are expensive to test and repair. A 1-inch or a 2-inch meter is probably almost not worth spending a whole lot of money on to test it. Just put some new parts in it and move forward. And so I think you've got to kind of pick your battles on this stuff, really, you know. And if the small meters only produce 5% of the water, then you should focus on the bigger production.
Do we have any idea what
But-
sizes we have?
You've got everything, probably up to 6 inch.
6.
But the reality of it is, in this kind of environment, every user is going to want to make sure their meter is registering every gallon they're using.
You're right.
Yeah.
They're not incentivized to have a frozen meter not spinning unless they don't like water in the future.
And meters don't always, yeah.
Anybody.
It's your record for the
You don't have a
adjudication.
Record, it's your record to prove your usage.
Yeah,
So if you're,
Even de minimis?
even de minimis.
well, de minimis, that may just be the stuff that floats under.
No,
but-
we're dealing with the city of Ventura, come on.
So, I mean, it's in everybody's, every user's gonna be interested in making sure that their meter is
You're right.
not, doesn't have a rock stuck on it, in it.
In that thought, what do you suggest we do with item 8A right now? Where would you like to see this go?
The appropriate thing would probably be to table it for the time being while we do some investigation and still what Fox, if it was modeled after Fox, we can find out what Fox is doing, because I know they're doing some real fancy meters right now.
Oh, yeah, for the water market.
The water, yeah. Who's in touch with Fox?
We can make,
You can make
we
that
can
call?
make contacts.
All right, well then, you're directed to, we're gonna table this, and we're gonna ask Fox what they're doing, and we'll bring it back down the road.
And we need to bring you back that testing resolution as well, so you
See what
see what that involves.
what's not happening currently.
Yeah, and what's not happening, exactly.
All right, that looks to be the extent of the agenda. Are there any other items you want to bring up? Is there a comment from the public? Otherwise, we're going to be adjourning. We are adjourned. It is I can't see that far, I don't have glasses.
25.
Point-
6:22. Thank you for attending.
answers.
Look forward to seeing you next, next meeting is December 4th.
CC. Point of clarification, you said December 11th, you said
Fourth.
December 4th.
Yes, it's on a Tuesday.
Same day as the Board of Supervisors.
So the agenda
It
is not
is.
correct.
No, the agenda's not correct.
It should be fun.
Thank you. Some checks here.
Hey, Larry?
I'm embarrassed to say anything, but this board is supported by all the pumpers, basically. It exists in part, the
Bye,
budget,
Lauren.
the budget in part is supported by the pumpers, and that's where you get the additional assessments in it. I believe the board should consider having our attorney give some, if it's within the purview of the board, to give some type of a guidance to all the pumpers who are getting notices and summonses.
We will.
You know,
He will give us general advice
I know I
for
saw
you.
the letter,
Yeah.
and I understand the meaning of the letter, the intent of it, but still, I think that should be somewhere put on the agenda, with everyone's permission,
Yeah.
because it's a very important thing, that this board at least shows, it may not have the responsibility, but it should show the good faith to
I talked to him about that, about establishing a client list, so that we could,
And they could have one attorney or one attorney's office, if they have 100 or 200 clients there, and the 200 clients pop in $20 an hour, they're getting $4,000 an hour,
that's right,
you know?
I know. We'll see how it works out. Everybody take a deep breath. would work for you to do that. You don't even have a
And it's
phone.
just kind of Google, so that image is just a Google Earth snapshot. So that's the property line approximately, here north. So here's the outcrop of the Harris, surface, or subcrop of this. That's the spot where we go, basically where those roads.
You're now.
I don't know, let's wait till.
And it's 45 degrees down. Yeah. So then if you look at the next thing, it's sort of a draft, just a hand-drawn cross-section of that property. So, raise those up. Dust your dust.
All right, good night.
Yeah.
I appreciate that you are.
So you're gonna call out and see where we're getting rid of, or paying more?
What is it?
Just regular old office stuff? Regular stuff? Okay. I'll see you. See you guys, thanks. We're gonna, I will, tomorrow morning, I'll pick a date and get organized. I'll get.
It's the 14th is a Wednesday.
Yeah, I just gotta get in front of my work calendar. I don't, I'm pretty good that whole week. Alright. I'm gonna be in 2 weeks in Chicago in November, so I gotta make sure, I gotta figure out which end of the month.
Oh,
Got the staff to help, so that's good.
I'm gonna go, I live in Chicago, busy otherwise I'm
okay.
NSN or MLS.
You have to be
Google.
somewhere
Who
Tuesday at 9.
knows?
Because it looks a lot like.
Yeah, Tuesday's not a good day.
Yeah, I usually can't do a meeting like this.
Okay for you?
I'm not.
Yeah, it's a 24-hour, 24/7, I'm 24/7 call right now.
Talk to you soon.
Yeah,
Yes.
we gotta spread it out.
Okay.
Thanks, Russ.
Glad you came. Thanks to you, I'm glad you did
They
so.
came back to me in the morning. And they got it all, they got the whole week, and I got this handout thing, but I'm not used to these kind of hours, it's nuts. How you doing, I'm there? Very nice to meet you. Thanks for your comments on that. You have plenty of experience of knowing the cost of it, huh? Yes, sir.
Eric's with Bridget.
right to privacy for reasonable comfort, any compromise privacy, go back.
How, we usually want that way, I guess.
Did you hear him?
Individual property.